Welcome back to the channel, co-creators. It's mysticrainn, your resident psychic medium and spiritual advisor, and today we are going to be talking about past lives. So shameless plug, if you want to get in touch, if you want a reading, or if you want a coaching session with me, make sure you check the links in the description box below. We are also coming out of New Year, New Me territory, and we are going into the love, romance, Valentine's Day territory. And as such, I will be doing a 40% off sale on all love-related astrology readings. So if you're interested in any of that, check out the link in the description box below. So we're talking compatibility readings, the actual romance of the relationship readings, as well as a bundle deal if you would like to get both of those reports 40% off. I will also soon be launching the Academy of Ascended Thought. So if any of you are interested in taking online spiritual courses, then I would suggest that you hit that subscribe button, hit that bell so you can be notified when the Academy officially launches. So let's jump in. So past lives, I was trying to figure out how I actually wanted to do this video. And so I figured I was just going to ramble and tell you about my past lives, and then also tell you how you can start to figure out what your own past lives are. I think that understanding your past lives, even if you don't understand the full life, even if you can't figure out what the full life is, understanding themes of your previous lifetimes helps you better understand why your life today looks the way it does, why your trauma that you have in this lifetime looks the way it does, why the certain issues that you feel like are reoccurring that always pops up, why that's the case, why your family relationships look the way they are, why your romantic relationships look the way they are. If you can understand the themes of your past life, you have a much better understanding of why your life is the way it is. Past lives can also tell you about like fears, irrational fears that you have, hobbies that you have, things that you just really like, and you don't know why you really like those things. It's just all of a sudden, like you've liked it since you were a baby, and it was always kind of unexplainable. Past lives are responsible for all of that. Past lives can tell you why you pick certain jobs and certain careers. Past lives are good for helping you understand various patterns of behaviors in your life and various patterns of things and events that happen to you. So I started looking into my past lives in about 7 or 8 years ago. And what I found is the best way to figure out what your past lives are is to simply do a really deep and intense meditation. Now, these days you can go on YouTube and find a guided meditation that'll get you there. These days, you know, at that time it was a little bit harder to find those things, but there's a plethora of them now. You just search like guided meditation for a past life, okay? And but just do really deep, intense meditation in order to kind of put yourself under. And so when you're in this deep meditation, what you need to understand is that it's not just meditation, it's the unlocking of a memory, right? So because your past lives are part of you and they're part of your soul, your past lives actually are in your memory. So the thing is, when we are born into this lifetime, we go through that veil of forgetfulness, the thing that causes us to forget everything that we know. And so that's why in this lifetime, so many people spend time feeling lost because they're trying to find their way, because they forgot everything they knew when they entered this particular lifetime. And so when you are doing your guided meditation in search of your past lives, what you are really doing is searching for your previous memories. So you want to approach the situation with understanding that you're just going under meditation, right? Or you're going under in order to remember something or to unlock a memory. And so when we think about how deep we want this meditation to be, we need to consider it. It needs to be deep as if someone was putting you under hypnosis, right? Because when you go under hypnosis, a lot of that is just you're going into a really sort of deep, suggestive, meditative space where you're open to things, where you're open to things unlocking and things coming to the front, right? And so when you look for your guided meditation for this particular thing, look for a nice long guided meditation, because you really kind of want to be in meditation for about an hour at least, right? Because an hour is how long it takes to start getting the good stuff. And then if you want more details of this particular life, it'll take longer than that. And so that's really how you start to figure out what your past lives are. Now, if that's not your thing, because no one wants to sit there in meditation all the time for that long, I would then suggest that you start journaling your dreams and start pulling out reoccurring symbols. If you are someone that has a reoccurring dream and you've been having this reoccurring dream since childhood, that's something that you really need to look into because it could potentially be a previous memory from a previous life. And so get in touch with previous symbols that you always notice happen in your dreams, or just previous things that you always notice happen in your life. If there's something that's reoccurring that happens in your life that has been reoccurring since childhood, then start paying attention to those things, because most likely they are clues as to things that have happened to you in the past life. Also start thinking about fears that you may have that you feel are irrational, not fears that you have that are justified, fears that you have that are irrational, meaning you're afraid of something or you're afraid of a particular event and you have no reason to be afraid of that in this lifetime because nothing like that has ever happened to you. Nothing like that has ever occurred. Nothing like that has even happened to people that you know. Maybe you feel like it's a scenario that you made up, right, in your head. Start taking a look at that as well, because it can point you to something that could have potentially happened in a previous lifetime. And as you're doing all of this, make sure your intention is that you learn what you need to know about your past lives that can help you in your future life. It's really cool to see your past lives, but you want to understand what can help you here. So if you have questions like, why does my life always end up like this? Why do I always feel like I have really bad luck in this particular area? If there are things like that that you feel about this particular life, when you start looking for your past life memories, make that be an intention. What can I find out that can help me grow in this lifetime? What can those things be? I do want to share with you that this will be a journey. This will be a long journey. Past lives take years to pull out, years to recover. And if you are fortunate to see it early, it may take you years to understand why that particular memory is the one that you remember, as opposed to maybe remembering something else. So that's how you start going into your past lives. Now I'm going to tell you about my past lives. Yay! Because it's spiritual chat and you guys love my stories. So now that we've got the boring stuff out of the way, which life do I want to start with? So I'll start with my first life. So the first life that I had, this was the first life I saw. This was probably about 8 years ago. So as a kid, I used to have a reoccurring dream. And I had this reoccurring dream all the way up until I saw that past life, and I have never seen it since then. I used to have these dreams where I would be running through the woods, and I always had a weapon. It was usually a knife or like a machete. And I always had some kind of like armor, but the armor was made, it was kind of like leather almost. So it kind of looked like it was made from like the skin of some kind of animal, right? And it was always in the woods, and I was always running. And I was always being chased. But in these dreams, I never, ever, 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 ever saw who was chasing me. But there was this profound level of awareness that no one was chasing me to catch me. They were chasing me to kill me. But as a kid, I was never afraid. I was never afraid that somebody was actually going to kill me. I would just kind of wake up and shrug it off, turn over, and go back to sleep. But I would always be running through the woods. It was always dense woods. I would be climbing trees, jumping off of trees, never breaking anything, and I was running. And I always had this like attitude of like, they think they can catch me. And it was a reoccurring thing, and I always had it. Now the scenery may change. So sometime I would dream it would be at nighttime. Sometime in the dream it would be in the daytime, but there was always a woods, and I was always running through a woods, and there was always somebody trying to catch me to kill me that I had never actually saw. And I could sense as a kid that it was always that my head was on the line. It almost kind of felt like there was a reward for like my death. But I was never bothered by it. And I had these dreams all the way up into my adulthood when I would reach moments of real life that were really stressful, then sometimes the dreams would get a lot more intense. But I was never actually afraid of it. And then when I actually did my first like past life regression, wasn't my first, this was probably my third, but when I saw my first life in a past life regression, I saw the same dream that I used to have, but it came up as a memory. And what I found out was I was one of the heads of this particular tribe. I do not believe this tribe is on this planet, by the way. That was always a weird thing as a kid, because it always felt otherworldly. It was woods and there were trees and stuff, but it never felt like it was this particular planet. And but I was really well respected, high up at this tribe, and I was kind of like an advisor to whoever was in charge of the tribe, like a chief or whatever. I was the advisor. I never saw the face of that person though. And my word held a lot of weight, and it was my role to protect the whole tribe in its entirety, particularly the women and the children. I was also a woman warrior. I wasn't a man at all. I was a woman warrior. I was fit. I was very strong, and I was very, very tall, and I was black. And it was my role to protect the tribe, particularly the women and the children. Also, I didn't have children myself, but I was very motherly. And I think a lot of that was because it was my role to protect those kids, and those kids really, really loved me. And I'm starting to wonder if this could be a reason as to why I never really desired kids in this particular lifetime as well. And I'm also very motherly, but I just never really desired it like that. Because in my other lifetimes, it was also kind of the same setup, but I was in charge of this role, or I was in charge of the protection of this particular tribe. And if you threatened the tribe, my first inclination was to kill you. And so what I've learned was that I was like this hitman, and I killed a lot of people. And because of this reason, everybody was trying to take my head off. But I had like this arrogance because no one could ever catch me. And I don't actually think that I was actually ever caught. I didn't see the memory that played out the whole lifetime, but I don't think they ever were actually able to catch me. I don't even think that I had a lot of close calls either. Now, in this lifetime, I also did see that I had a tendency to mess with them, because the people that were trying to catch me were always men. And so it was actually a very kind of progressive thing, because people in those roles were men, but I was a woman, and I was the one that was in charge of the whole show. And so I thought it was fun. So when I would be running away and these people were trying to catch me, I would be laughing at them, like, like I would be laughing through the woods. And I remember it being fun for me. And it's really interesting now, because I very much in this lifetime have a very warrior spirit, right? It just played out in a bunch of different kind of ways. Like I went to law school, I'm heavily involved in social justice, and it just played out differently, but the spirit is the same. So that was one lifetime. I don't know what my name was either, but my hair used to usually be in like dreads. That was one lifetime. There was another lifetime that I saw where this was like medieval times, and I was a white woman, and I was part of that the wealthy family, or the royal family, like the family in charge. I was like a part of that family. And it was a situation where kind of everyone was dying. There was famine, and people were being tortured and beheaded. And I actually was really disappointed in my family, and I was embarrassed to be a part of that family. And I used to kind of like sit in, I guess you would call it a castle-like structure. And I was like well done up, and I was clean, and I was never hungry. And I would look out my window, and I would see all these people suffering, begging for food, being killed, and I hated it. So in this particular lifetime, there was a moment where I ran away. So it was like late at night, in the middle of the night, I like escaped, I ran away, and I had to get past the drawbridge, because where we were, there was a drawbridge and there was a moat, and I had to get past that. And I like did some kind of scheming where I like snuck out, and I had like timed it. I had planned the escape, and I had timed it, because I had to get over it had to be dark enough so no one would see me running away, because they would know who I was. But also early enough that I could get out of the grounds before the drawbridge would close, because there was a moat and I wouldn't be able to get to the other side. And there was like plotting to do that. And I did eventually, and I made it. And then I left, and then I like ran into the woods. And then I like chopped off my hair. So I must have had a knife, but like the next memory that came, all my hair was cut off. And I had stumbled across this group, and it was like this group of like renegades or like vigilantes, and they were actually trying to take down that family. They were trying to take out the powers, because they didn't agree with how my family was treating people, and they felt that my family should be dead, and they had felt like they could do a better job. So there was like these people that had organized in like these pockets and these groups to come and try to fight my family, but they never were successful, because again, the moat, the drawbridge, they were never really able to get in. Anyway, I found this group. I stalked this group for a really long time, and it got to the point where I eventually like worked up the courage, right? It's crazy that I'm talking about this because it feels like a screenplay, right? But I like worked up the courage to like go and like, I guess, introduce myself. It was more so of like, I wasn't asking for help, but I also knew that I was alone and I didn't know anything that happened outside of the grounds, and like I didn't have any clothes and I didn't know how to hunt. It was like a whole thing. And they saw me, immediately knew who I was, that I was a part of this family. And then they like took like this man, I guess the man in charge, like grabbed me up in this chokehold, and they had all decided that they had wanted to kill me. And then, but like, you see what I'm saying? Like reoccurring themes, right? So they had all decided that they had wanted to kill me. And then there was this guy that was in the back of the group that said, no, wait. And he like somehow convinced them not to do it. And then so the guy that was in charge was like, you keep an eye on her. She's your responsibility. And if she does something, then like we kill you. Like it was like this whole thing. And they hated me. And in that lifetime, we never actually got to a point where they liked me. I was always on the outs of the group, but I needed a group, because like, what was I going to do? And then so like, but because of them, I like learned how to hunt. I learned how to fish. I learned how to like make clothing from like the hides of animals and like and different things like that. I learned how to build structures. I learned how to use like wood to like build cabins and different things like that. And so like I joined the group, even though they didn't like me, I still joined the group out of an act of defiance, because I was asking them to and they were saying no. And so out of an act of defiance, I joined this group because I wanted to be a part of like the group that like took out the family. And I do remember in this lifetime eating a lot of beavers, because that's really all that there was. Because there was a famine, people tried to hunt, but then where we were was like over hunted. So there wasn't a lot of animals left. A lot of it was like scarcity. But for this particular memory, I do remember hunting and like getting a beaver. And then I like dragged the beaver home to like this cabin. And I would like skin it, and then I would like put the meat over a fire, and then I would eat it. But I do remember in this particular lifetime, because everything was so tense, it was always a state of war, and I was always fighting. There was no such thing as like creating like clothes to sleep in. I slept in my fighting clothes. Like I slept in my clothes with armor on them, and it was more like napping. And my knife and my weapons, I used to also carry a bow and arrow. Those were always right next to me. So if I heard something in the middle of the night, I can jump up and I can go. So I always had like something on my feet, like shoes or like shoe-like items, right? I always was prepared to fight. And it's really interesting because, again, similar themes. This was just a completely different lifetime. I feel like in this lifetime, I died in the midst of fighting. I don't feel like that was a lifetime where I feel like I accomplished what it was that I had wanted to accomplish. There was a lot of hatred in my heart towards my family, and I just could not understand how they could be so horrendous and how they could let their people die and starve the way they were dying and starving. And I wanted nothing more to be removed. And I remember trying really, really hard to change my appearance, to change how my hair looked. I remember hair being a really big deal. And I got it to the point where it was all cut off. It wasn't even a bob. It was like a choppy buzz cut, because I was trying to not look like them. I didn't want people to know that that was where I came from. But it never got better. It always got worse. It always became more famine, more fighting, more dying. And I remember in that lifetime being just really tired and really young. I don't think I made it past maybe 32 years old in that particular lifetime. And then I saw another lifetime where I was like this really petite, like this, like, where would I say I was from? So in today's time, I was from like what we would call the Mediterranean. So somewhere around Italy and Greece. So, but it wasn't that at that time, right? Like there was no borders, nothing had been broken up, there was no regions, but somewhere around that kind of area. And I was like this really, really, really tiny, petite woman, and I was on my own, and I was dirty. I remember being just really, really dirty, no shoes on my feet. And I was just walking, and I was just on my own, and I was walking through the woods. Again, there are themes, right? There are like patterns. And I came across a village, and the village was a very poor village. And so the way the geography was set up, this particular village, like there's this village, and then the way, like, what are the words? Like the topography of like the ground, it was at like this bottom of like a valley type. Because if you look up the hill or like up of this mountain, you would see kind of like this massive structure, not a castle, but like a city, like an old kind of city where the people with money lived, right? Where all like the powers and the royals, they all lived there, and then like the peasants all lived at the bottom. And it was like a peasant village, and it was made out of like it was like all the stone masonry that it was made. It was the structure. And I walked in there, and they were all very welcoming. Someone had asked me like why I was alone and like where I was, and they took me in. And there was this family in like this peasant village that kind of adopted me, knowing I was on my own. They had asked me where my family was. I told them I didn't have any. They had asked me where, like, you know, like mom and dad, did they die? I told them I didn't have any parents. Now, for this particular peasant video, for whatever reason, in this particular lifetime, there were family units. So there were still mothers and fathers and like children. Like there was family units, and I didn't have my family unit. I don't actually know what happened to the family. I never saw that memory. But they took me in, and they kind of like adopted me. And it was so poor that there was no such thing as a house or like a room. And so what they would do is in the walls, they would carve out like a cubby, and the cubby would be the bed. And so they would put straw and hay in the cubby so you can lay on it. And then that was what you slept in. That was like your room. And so they had an extra cubby, and so they let me sleep there. And I had to earn my keep. So I had to work. And so what happened was I became the person that was in charge of tending to all the chickens. So all the chickens that you would picture like running through villages were my chickens. And so because I was tending to them, I used to sell all of their eggs in this market, and I would sell all these chicken eggs. And something about this lifetime, though, there was a lot of produce. There was a lot of like farming. So I remember seeing a lot of tomatoes, and there were a lot of eggs because I tended all these chickens. And there used to be like big group dinners, and I like learned how to make like bread with like a brick and like a mortar, like a pestle. Like they taught me how to take like things that were like flour and grind it up and to turn it into like bread that you would like bake on like fire. And I remember it was very simple. It's a very simple life. It was a very jovial life, but it was also a very lonely life because I didn't have my own family unit. I remember feeling like I was so grateful that they took me in, but being sad that like I would see people with their families and their parents, and I didn't have that. But it's one of those things too, where I look at my life now, and I've got a very small family unit. I never grew up with my father. My mother has passed away. And I was actually really grateful for when I found that life, because it was like, I've been here before, I can do this. And for me, what I learned about that life was going through in a lifetime without that family unit is something that I have done time and time again. And so it's part of my pattern. And so at that time, because I was still going through my healing, I used to feel like I wasn't weak enough to withstand that. And now I'm in a part of my journey where I'm like, no, like you have literally always prepared to do that. Like you are more than trained to be able to live that kind of life. And so that was what I took out of that life. I also remember in the family that adopted me, there was this boy that was my age. I say boy, but like young man, because I must have been around 20-ish. And so he was around the same age, and we liked each other. We had a crush on each other, and we used to always like give each other the eye, but we were always very shy. I don't actually know what the outcome of that was, though. I don't know what the rest of that memory is, but that was another guy. And then we liked each other. And then I had another past life, and it was a real blip. The memory was really blip. All I know that I can tell you was that I was a man and I was in deep, dark water and I was drowning. And that's the end of the memory. I have nothing else. That's the end of the memory. But I also hate deep water. I hate deep, dark water. So yeah, like those have been my memories. And from all of them, I've been able to understand like my personality traits. Like, so for example, when it comes to like, you know, there was one life that I was 100% a warrior, and two where I was posing as a warrior. My other life, the one when I ran away from like my well-to-do family, right? Which again is another lifetime showing of me living without a family unit. Like I very much have that kind of personality in this lifetime. I'm very much a type of person that's like, you're gonna try me? You think that's gonna be successful? Like to this day, I still have that kind of reaction, particularly in my line of work. You kind of have to have that type of attitude. Like even in my line of work, sometimes people will say, hey, you know, so-and-so has been talking about you. And my response is always like, whatever, like, oh, okay. And my warrior life where I was like the hitman, that was my response to everything. I did not care. I was always like, you think that you're going to outdo me? You're not going to outdo me. And I'm the type of person that's like, you think you're going to outdo me? But it's really interesting because I'm also the type of person where like not many things bothers them. Like I have a very long fuse. So even when people are trying it, I'm usually the type of person to lay down the boundary. But in terms of being bothered by something, it takes a lot to get me there because my first thought is, you think you're going to outdo me? Oh, okay. But then when you start to see your past lives and I see that I was taking everybody out, of course I don't care, right? And of course that's a personality trait that's kind of in a really weird way rolled over, because even back in my legal days, my thought process was always, I'm going to get you before you get me, right? And so, but now I'm like, oh, like that's why I'm wired like that. That's why I think like that. I always was really big on like social justice issues and fairness. And looking at all my lives, I'm like, okay, well, all of that makes sense. Like, you know, so when you start to understand your lives, you start to understand you, because your lives, those experiences is a reflection of your overall experience. We think our experience is everything that's in this lifetime, when it's not. It's like we are infinite beings. We are infinite. Do you know how much information and wisdom we actually hold? We hold so much information and we hold so much wisdom that is way beyond our realm of understanding because of the limitations that we have while in this body, in this dimension, right? Live in this particular lifetime and in this particular life experience. But when you have the ability to search for self, and you know self by knowing all aspects of yourself, you get a greater understanding. So again, if you are interested in what could have happened in the past life, start to look at your patterns, right? Patterns come across in behavior, experiences, and occurrences. Also start to look at if you have any reoccurring symbols that you have always had, not anything that's really new. It's usually something that you've always experienced throughout life, reoccurring symbols or reoccurring dreams. Take a look to see if you have any reoccurring dreams as well, and start really kind of combing through those things to see what it can mean. And then the only real way to figure out what your past lives are outside of that is by doing past life regression. And past life regression is just real intense meditation that you almost go into a hypnosis state. And it's usually guided. And these days you can find guided videos on the internet. And when you do that, if this is something that you want to do, make sure before you go under in your meditation, set the intention that you only want to see memories that can help you in this lifetime. because you're going to get all your memories back anyway, right? Like when you graduate and your life here and you go back to source, you're going to get all your memories back. So it doesn't make sense seeing just memories. If you want to grow in this lifetime, set the intention that you're going to see things that are going to help you understand why your life today is why your life is what it is today. Set those intentions. And by the way, guys, I also want you guys to know for funsies that you can also see future lives too. So here's the thing. Time doesn't exist. It only exists here, but outside of our reality, time is not a thing. Everything is happening right here, right now at the same time, right? And so you can see future lives. I've seen some of my future lives, and when you can get there, it's really the same intention. You can after you do your past life regression and that hypnosis and you get used to that energetic feeling, you can then duplicate that, but the intention that you set at that time is, let me see a year from now, let me see 5 years from now, let me see 20 years from now, let me see 100 years from now. And you can actually push the time into the future to see what it is. I actually like the idea of future life progression, and I've done it before, because if you see something that you don't like, if you see it now, you can change it, right? I have also seen other people's future lives, and I have thought to myself, ooh, like, I wish I didn't have all that information. So, because it's like spiritual chat and you guys love it when I ramble. First of all, outside of this lifetime, I don't usually incarnate much. It's not my thing. I don't really like incarnating. I've been there, done that type of energy, but for whatever reason, whatever is going on, kind of on this planet and in this earth, I decided to like volunteer as tribute, but I don't actually usually incarnate. That's actually something that I remember. I just chose to do it for this particular time to kind of assist, right? The sort of like collective consciousness here. But I'm usually a guide. I'm usually I usually operate in the form of a guide or operate in the form of a spiritual guide for other people. And that's, I believe, is part of the reason as to why when I chose to incarnate specifically here for life on Earth, because as a guide, I help so many people that are experiencing life on Earth. And so I had a decent grasp of it. And so I decided to incarnate here. And so, but in future lives, I usually see future lives heavy on the quotation marks, right? When I'm being somebody else's guide. And what I found out, and my niece does not know this, but I have a niece that is 25 years old. And I have found out that me and her, she likes to incarnate when I incarnate. Her soul likes to be around when my soul is around because I'm one of her guides. So if I choose to incarnate, she'll usually incarnate shortly after me. And so she incarnated after me, and I'm always one of her guides. And I very much function as one of her guides in real life. And I very much function as like one of her spiritual guides in real life. But it's really interesting because I saw like one of her future lives, but in this future life, she was incarnate and I was on the other side of the veil as a spiritual guide. And she, in this particular, like when I saw it, I never told her this, but she was crying. She was upset over something. And I'm talking like, when I say, I'm talking like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, because you can go out as far as you want to go out, and time doesn't exist out of here. So in terms of like future with her, like we're talking like way in the future. She was incarnate. I don't even know what planet we're on, right? Not even fully convinced it's Earth, if I'm honest. And she was upset about something, and I'm looking at her from the other side of the veil, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go again. And it was so cool seeing it, because that's how I look at her today. Like, I'll look at her and I'll be like, oh, here we go again. And it was so funny to see that we still have that relationship so far into the future, and that our souls are tied the way they're tied up. So that's really cool. So when you start looking into your past lives, you may also start to understand that there are some people that are in your lives today that were a part of your previous lives. This happens a lot with like best friends. Like people will have best friends and they'll be like, I don't know, I just feel like I've known them forever. How many of you guys have said that? How many of you guys have like been in a relationship and like you've known each other for 2 weeks and you feel like, I don't know, I feel like we've known each other forever. How often do you do that, right? Because we have a tendency to incarnate with our groups, our soul groups, to learn together. And so it's really interesting in the sense of like, there's an aspect of like plotting there where you're like, okay, I'm going to incarnate as this. You come in 10 years later as this. You know, sometimes you incarnate again and then one person's the parent, one person's the child. You come back in a different lifetime. You guys are lovers. You come back in a different lifetime. You know, one is a boss, one is a, you know what I mean? Like, it's really cool how interconnected it all is. But I would highly suggest that you guys start looking into your past lives, because it gives you a lot of understanding when it comes to like main themes that happen to your life in like major traumatic events that happened in your life, and just like overall why you are who you are, because we are all infinite beings. And if you start looking into it, then you start to go, oh, that's why. And I always find that when you start to understand the reason for something, it can be such a liberating experience. But anyway, I'm over myself. I hope you guys found that really, really interesting. And, you know, before I let you go, make sure you check out the description box below, and I'll see you guys soon.